Hey, Nero here. Failure is something that we all go through in life, but at least you cannot fuck up and fail as hard as Nintendo did back in 1995. The Virtual Boy, Nintendo's most popular failure. I'm sure you already know how horrible those games were or how bad the console was received. So how did this idea get past quality control, and why did Nintendo decide to bring it back for Nintendo Switch Online? Well, we'll have to go back to a simpler time, before I was even liquid. 1985, 10 years before the Virtual Boy released, the NES has finally launched in North America, and Reflections Technology Inc., also known as RTI, has started developing a prototype for a stereoscopic head tracking device that they called the Private Eye. So what were its uses? Well, it was meant to be for an everyday, run-of-the-mill business person. They could use it to check facts. There were other uses for it too. It was basically like if your phone was a VR headset. So throughout the rest of the 80s, RTI was trying to seek funding and partnership to turn the Private Eye into a commercial product. They wanted funding from anyone, so they tried to market it to different industries like medical, entertainment, even the military, and all of these fell short. So in 1990, RTI pivots to the toys and games industry, developing a tech demo where the player controls a tank. So RTI with their new tech demo goes to companies like Mattel, Hasbro, and Sega to pitch the idea. Now, there was no recordings of how these pitches went, but I could imagine it going like, so this is our new product, the Private Eye, get the fuck out. RTI can't catch a break now, can't they? So why were all these companies declining? Well, there was one guess. It was motion sickness as described by Sega, which makes a lot of sense. You don't want your customers vomiting all over the product or even other people. Eventually, RTI went to Nintendo, demonstrating how it worked, and Nintendo agreed for funding. Now, why would they do that? Well, it was none other than Gunpei Yokoi, who was the head of Nintendo's research and development at the time. He had this philosophy when it comes to making stuff, and it was to take technology that everyone had stopped caring about and combined it in ways that nobody had tried. This philosophy was the reason behind the Game & Watch and the Game Boy's success. Gunpei thought that this tech would make it so competitors would find it difficult to emulate. It would take them at least a year to do so, and that it would enhance Nintendo's reputation as an innovator and a developer. And in retrospect, that was a fucking lie. Nintendo entered this exclusive agreement with RTI to license its technology, and using this agreement, they went into making the product codenamed VR32. They eventually gave it the name Virtual Boy in late 1994, and showing it off at the Shoshinkai Software Exhibition in Japan. This exhibition was later changed and is more known as Nintendo Space World. This was an expo Nintendo used to hold where they would talk about it, if it wasn't obvious enough, Nintendo related stuff. And in 1994 specifically, it was all about the Virtual Boy. Hiroshi Yamauchi, Nintendo's president at the time, unveiled the Virtual Boy here, so how was the audience reaction? It was definitely a reaction. Yeah, so you've got to keep in mind that there was a lot of rumors spreading around at the time about Nintendo's new virtual reality console. People were excited for this, and some of them were thinking that this shit was going to be better than sex. But then they get to finally try it out, and all they see is I mean, look at the display. You can get away with something like that on the Game Boy. It's a tiny screen and it wasn't marketed as some top-of-the-line tech. But when it's the only thing you can see when playing, obviously people weren't going to be too thrilled about it. Though, surprisingly enough, the hardcore Nintendo fans tried to stay optimistic, so we can see after all this time things haven't changed. Welcome to 1995, bitches. We got Toy Story, GoldenEye, the PlayStation released, and oh, I guess the Virtual Boy's there too. Yeah, so this is what 4 years of developing at Nintendo looks like. But then again, you can't blame them. They were rushed, mostly due to the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn releasing around this time. While Nintendo was still using a 16-bit processor with the SNES, the other competitors were starting to use 32-bit, and the Nintendo 64 was still a year away. They can't rush their next big console, so they rushed the Virtual Boy instead. It was using a 32-bit processor just like the competitors. But then, it didn't really look like 32-bit quality, due to the two LED screens that they were using for the display, so the power wasn't apparent. And speaking of cons, the way you actually use this thing. You would have had to put your head in some uncomfortable angle or had some perfect desk setup just to use it. I really wish instead of rushing it, they could have used the extra time to make a head strap, and also went into adding head tracking too, since they were planning on doing that. And speaking of development that was cut, Nintendo was actually developing a shoulder harness to combat this problem and to make it more comfortable. And I'm sure that totally would have helped. Anyways, enough about the console. How were the games? Well, there was only 22 that released in total. It's strange how the Virtual Boy library was. Some games were only released in Japan, which makes sense. Well, some were only in North America. So after talking about the Virtual Boy, I decided to buy one for myself to give you my first-hand impressions on the games. So let's see how this actually goes. I'll play 5 games that were released on Nintendo Switch Online. This will be a quickfire round of them since I feel like I'm gonna fuck up my neck even more if I play any of these games for longer than 5 minutes. And I'll be rating these games from 1 to 11, which is the same amount of letters of the Virtual Boy if you include the space in the middle. Mario Tennis. This was a pack title for the Virtual Boy. Everyone that had a Virtual Boy had Mario Tennis. So how was this as a first impression? Not good. It is the worst Mario Tennis game I've ever played. I'm not sure if this was me not setting up the IPD correctly before playing it, but I couldn't hit the ball for the life of me. And then, when it was my turn to serve the ball, every single time I was hitting it into the net or off the court, causing me to get faults, then double faults. It actually pissed me off. I nearly threw this shit into the wall. Bad first impressions. I'm giving this a 2 out of 10. I just hope these next games aren't similar. 3D Tetris. What if we made Tetris for the Virtual Boy? Oh shit, wait, we already did that already. What if we completely changed Tetris to make it not feel like Tetris? I don't know why, but when I was playing, I don't know what else to call it, but the area that you play in, it was moving around. And I'm not sure if that was supposed to show each angle, but I really wish they didn't do that. Also, getting a line in this game doesn't feel as rewarding as getting one in regular Tetris. And to make it even worse, why the fuck would they give the Tetraminos faces? Overall, I'm giving this game a 3 out of 11. Better than Mario Tennis. Wario Land. How did Wario get a platformer on the Virtual Boy but not Mario? Besides that, why the fuck was this the best game that I played on the Virtual Boy? All the other games have been dog shit so far, but this was fine. Maybe it's some sort of Stockholm Syndrome type of thing, playing all those shitty games beforehand, but playing this, it was fine. I have to give this game an 11 out of 11. This was the most surprising game on this list. Talero Boxer. I don't know why, whenever I thought of the Virtual Boy, I always thought of Talero Boxer. So this was the game that I was most excited for, and I really shouldn't have. There's a pattern with these Virtual Boy games. It's just shit game after shit game, and sadly, this one is no exception. It just feels like a worse version of Punch-Out, and in Punch-Out, when versing your opponents, it felt like that there was some sort of rhythm, and you could find out that rhythm after a bit and beat your opponent, but in Talero Boxer, it felt nothing like this. I think I'd have to give this game a 5 out of 11. The Mansion of Innsmouth. I'm not really a horror game type of guy. I mean, I shit myself playing Five Nights at Freddy's once. So this game had to be last on the list. And while playing it, I slowly realized that it wasn't really horror. I don't know why I was so worried. It's more of like an FPS game, kind of. It reminds me a lot of Revelation's Persona with the dungeons in those games. But in this game, there were monsters and you had to shoot them. And while playing, it just made me wish that Nintendo didn't go through with cutting the head tracking on this. Overall, this game, I would have to give it a 3 out of 11. This just made me wonder how it would be if Nintendo went through with their original plan without cutting anything. So after playing all these games, what were my thoughts of the console overall? It's the biggest piece of dog shit. All of the games on this console was terrible besides Wario Land. How the was Wario Land the best game on the Virtual Boy? Too bad I couldn't play it for long, because after trying all these games and being a dumbass not choosing the automatic pause feature on these games, I ended up with a headache. I have no idea if this was some sort of placebo, but my head was splitting. Don't do what I did. Now, tangent aside, for the big question you've all been waiting for, it may be pretty obvious, but how was the Virtual Boy success? Well, it outsold 13 times the population of Greenland. Pretty impressive, right? Greenland has a population of 56,000. Yeah, the Virtual Boy was a flop. By late 1995, the Virtual Boy was already out the doors. It was soon discontinued in Japan, and later in 1996 for North America. So this thing didn't even sell outside of North America and Japan. It was a commercial flop by all regards. But now, I'm curious, why the f*** did Nintendo decide to bring the Virtual Boy back? It's like if Sony released the PlayStation TV again. It makes no sense. Well, I guess the answer is obvious. Money. But for real, my guess is that the Virtual Boy was a massive failure. I'm sure if you know about Nintendo, you know about the Virtual Boy. But from the many people that know about the Virtual Boy being a failure, how many of them could say that they actually experienced it? I mean, it's the same with other consoles on Nintendo Switch Online if you think about it. There were tons of people who missed the NES, N64, GameCube when they first came out, or they weren't even born yet when those consoles came out. Me. Another reason could be nostalgia. I don't really know who's nostalgic to the Virtual Boy out of all things, but there's gotta be someone out there. And I mean, it hasn't been a huge flop for Nintendo a second time around. The Virtual Boy replica sold out when they first announced it, so there's definitely a market out there. And I am definitely a part of that market. God, why the f*** did I buy this thing?